Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, we are going to be concluding What If Issei Was the Shield Hero, Highschool DxD, Curse of the Shield, Season 3, Part 3. As always, if you are a fan of the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Before we get started with today's video, I do have one brief announcement. That is that we are going to be bringing a new segment onto the channel. I've been working on this for a while now, and I feel like now is the perfect time to bring it to light. On this channel, we like to do storytelling, deep dives, and things of that nature. And going into this year, I want to grow my channel in many different ways. I want to try different video formats, different type of ideas, versus battles, in-depth discussions, reviews, all that good stuff. And I want to get into a bit of the spooky. It's not Halloween season, but it never needs to be Halloween to be a little afraid. And that's why I am proud to introduce that I am going to be bringing to you Power Core After Dark, where I do horror stories, true horror stories, and creepypastas and things of that nature. So if you're a fan of the dark and mysterious, then why don't you give Power Core After Dark a try? Stay tuned, if you dare. Other than that, though, we're going to be getting straight into today's video, so as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Issei had now donned the power of the cursed black dragon, Juggernaut Drive. The large beast, easily making short work of Shelba Beelzebub, destroying the descendant of the ancient devil faction. However, even in his victory, it meant nothing to him in this moment. For Issei's heart, it was clouded and filled with nothing but absolute rage. This was the curse of the shield, the wrath shield, the shield of anger, of hatred, and of vitriol. That was what the curse fed on. It fed on the pain and the suffering. It trapped oneself in his own mind to the point where the rage would drive one insane. And that was how the cursed power was unleashed. As everyone around tried to figure out what they should do, unsure of how to return Issei back to his original state, already dealing with the loss of Asya, they would be surprised in that moment, as not too far behind them, a dimensional void would open with Vali appearing, along with a few others from the Chaos Brigade, and in their arms was Asya Argento. Vali had recruited many with powers and abilities that were suited for his needs. One of them being the ability to travel through the dimensional gap without suffering the fate of being crushed by the void. By chance, they had happened to come across Asya, saving her in the process and bringing her back. But Vali had come, not just for that, but for a much different reason. Even while inside of the dimensional gap, he could sense the power radiating from Issei, this cursed energy of the black dragon. And not only had this caught the attention of Vali, but there was someone else there as well. Two friends, two enemies, now finally making their appearance. Cyra Org would appear also, sporting the boosted gear. as Cyber walked over to Volley, the tall man even towering him. The two of them would size each other up before giving proper introductions. Volley Lucifer and Cyber Bale, the Red and White Dragon Emperor. Dreg and Albion getting a chance to speak with one another for what it seemed like a long time. In the process, they would look over to see their third brother, Kuroi. They could sense the cursed power, just as potent as it was even back then. While they were grateful that Asya was saved, they turned to the two Dragon Emperors asking for their help to save Issei from himself. Of course, they knew that they had their own agendas and their own goals. Cyber was more than willing to help. He viewed Issei as a rival and someone to challenge himself against. And as for Volley, well, he had his own plans. And all the same, it wouldn't be right to leave another dragon in the wind. As Rias moved on ahead, she would be followed by her cousin, Cyber as well as Volley. The two of them entering into their own juggernaut drives, as the large, red and white dragon would fly on ahead, before engaging with their brother. A three-way standoff between them all. Kuroi, Albion, and Dreg. For many, it was a sight for sore eyes. The three great dragon emperors all together at once. This was a rarity. Even in all the times, it had only been but a handful of moments where all three were actually present. Usually one would battle the other off, and whoever survived would face the remaining brother. And this was the cycle that repeated itself. A three-way race, a three-way deadlock. Something that was not easily avoidable. The trifecta of dragons. Both Volley and Cyber would use their power. Combining, they were more than capable of holding Issei down, of keeping him in place, and siphoning as much of the power from him as possible. However, even still, Issei had not untransformed yet. Rias trying to reach out for him, trying to open up to him. But deep inside of Issei's own mind, he was still being swallowed by his hatred, his anger, his vengeance, his rage. He reflected on everything that he had been through up until now. Every battle, every failure. He remembered all the times that he had tried to hold in his emotions. All the times he put up a smile, only to hide the pain that he was feeling deep inside. Asya was the culmination of that pain. She was a beautiful girl, innocent in every way. She had done nothing wrong. She didn't deserve this fate. And yet time and time again she found herself in the crosshairs of schemes that were greater machinations than she could ever dream of. Asya was merely a drop of water in the ocean compared to everything else around her. In the grand scheme of things, you could say that she didn't matter to anyone else. But to Issei and the others, she did. To them, her life had that much value. And to feel that her life was that insignificantly snuffed out, and that Issei could do nothing to save her, it filled him with the ultimate rage. A rage directed at no one else but himself. In his own mind, he found himself walking in a dark forest, until eventually he came to the end where a door was. However, in front of this door stood himself. This Issei didn't move and did not speak. As Issei ran towards his doppelganger, he held him on the ground and began to beat him over and over again. The doppelganger didn't move, it didn't fight, it didn't resist, nothing at all. Issei continuing to rain down the blows, choking the life out of himself. But yet every blow that hit, it felt as though he were being hit twice as hard. Every time he tried to choke himself out, he felt that he were losing air. Every pain, every anger, every blow dealt to himself, he only felt it 10 times more. As Issei continued to do this, though, there would be multiple lights that would form around him. The lights transformed into shields, the various shields that he had accessed over time. The Holy Cross shield, the Black Angel shield, the Sage Arts shield, the Dragon Slayer Ascalon shield. These 4 shields all transformed, each one forming the silhouette of a girl that Issei knew. The silhouette of Asya in the Holy Cross shield. The silhouette of Akeno in the Black Angel shield. The silhouette of Koneko in the Sage Arts shield. And the silhouette of Zenobia in the Dragon Slayer Ascalon shield. The silhouettes of light would all surround Issei and pull him away. As they did so, they would hold Issei up and pull him into a hug. Issei was distracted for a moment, but this moment was all it needed, as a 5th silhouette would appear. She was crimson red and light, her hair long and flowing. This one did not have a shield like the others, but her presence was strong all the same. It didn't take much for Issei to realize who this person was, simply uttering her name as his eyes awoken into the real world. As he did so, he would see Rias standing above him, as she moved down to hold the boy close to her, wrapping him in her embrace, feeling as though her reaching out towards him had finally gotten through and now he was free. Everyone was happy to see Issei had returned back to normal, the cursed shield now residing back into its standard form, the regular shield now on his arm. Orpheus would arrive as well with Vali, as she could sense that there was something within him, a curse, and it had manifested and taken hold of his consciousness. As everyone gathered together to make sure that Issei was alright, he would see that Asya had been there, and he rushed over to her immediately. Knowing that she was okay, it filled him with a great sense of relief. Before he turned, and he walked over towards Syra Org and Vali. The others watching on as now the 3 great dragons were meeting together. Issei would thank the 2 of them for their help, noting that he should have done a much better job and not given in to his emotions. However, Syra Org would say that for a man to not show any emotion at all is no real man at all. And as for Vali, he noted that they were rivals after all, and he had his own reasons for doing so. Directing the 2's attention, they would see a great red dragon passing through. This was known as the Dragon God Emperor, or Great Red, the dragon that was sealed within the dimensional gap. But every now and again, you could see his presence passing through. Orpheus would arrive as well, revealing what her true aim was. Orpheus being the dragon of infinity. All she wished to do was live in the dimensional gap in peace and silence. In order for her to do so, Great Red needed to be removed. And for Vali, his goal was to become the master of dragons and defeat the Great Red in combat. A sacred tradition that had long since been forgotten. It now became clear what the Chaos Brigade were after, their ultimate end goal. All the same, the 3 dragons would fist bump together, assuring that they would train and get stronger for the future, and to see which dragon was truly the best, the red, the white, or the black. Eventually everyone would go their separate ways, and Issei was preparing to go home with everyone else. However, before leaving, he would apologize though. He apologized to Asya and to Rias and everyone else. He knew that he should have been better from the start, and that if he had been, nothing like this would have happened. But they would quickly tell him to not say another word, assuring him that none of this was his fault, and that they were happy with him. They were happy for everything that he had done. It seemed that all was well, and everyone was getting ready to go home, when they turned to Issei in his tired clothes and they asked what it was that was on his chest. As he ripped off the rest of his torn shirt, now having no shirt at all, they would look on to see that the dragon's tattoo, it had grown exponentially, until now it looked as though the dragon was covering his entire body, with black markings surrounding his arms and his torso and his back and his chest, all the way up to his neck. In that moment, Issei would pass out, falling to the ground completely unconscious and no one being able to wake him. Vali and Cyrorg looking at one another, as they understood the drawbacks of using the Juggernaut drive in its imperfect state. It was in fact truly a double-edged sword. It could be a way for great power, but that great power came at a cost. Back in the Grimory domain, everyone would be gathered together while Issei was sound asleep. They were discussing what to do since he had been unconscious for some time, trapped in a coma-like state. Azazel would assume that the best way for Issei to awaken was to be healed by Asya with her twilight healing, as he could tell that the damage that was done to Issei wasn't outward but inward. It was his heart. His emotions had become erect. Many would think that when it came to battle, that to only be healed physically was the main concern. But there was mental, emotional, and spiritual damage that could be taken as well. Something like that could not easily be healed. Case in point, for someone like Zenobia, when she learned the truth that God no longer existed, her faith in the system had truly been shook, to a point where even if she wanted to, she could no longer serve the church the way that she used to. Her strength and power just wouldn't be there, through no fault of her own. The mental mindscape is a very powerful thing, one that requires much healing in order to process. While everyone was a bit concerned, Rias had full confidence that Asya could heal Issei and bring him back to them. And Asya wanted to. Issei had gone through so much for her, for everyone. If she could return the favor in any way, then she was more than willing to do so. As everyone left the room, Asya would use her twilight healing, clutching onto the shield that was attached to Issei's arm. As she did so, and her power began to manifest, she would find herself entering into Issei's own mindscape. As she did so, she would find herself in a dark forest, walking about, unsure of what she would find, until eventually she came towards the end of the forest, where she would see a silhouette. It was the silhouette of Issei. He was nothing but pure light, but she could make out who it was. She could sense it. she knew in her heart this was Issei's consciousness. This Issei was sitting in front of the door, a door that he dared not open. This door was the manifestation of everything that Issei feared, everything that held him back, as he had been sitting there for some time, not knowing how long he had been here. A few days, a few weeks, months, maybe even years. Issei would approach the silhouette and speak to it. The silhouette did not turn or say a word. It only sat there in its silence. Issei kneeling down behind him, hugging him from behind and asking what was wrong. And then Issei would speak. "It's all my fault, Issei. Why you suffer, it's all my fault." "You shouldn't feel that way, Issei. You haven't done anything wrong." "But I have. I was foolish to think that I could protect you, that I could keep you safe from harm. I made that pledge to Rainier. I told her that I could protect you no matter what. And yet look at what's happened now. In the grand scheme of things, I'm no better at protecting you now than I was back then." Issei wanted to object immediately, but Issei continued. "If it hadn't been for Vali, if it hadn't been for pure luck, on a whim, you wouldn't be here anymore. Issei, I have all of this power. Sometimes it's overbearing, but sometimes it's exhilarating. Do you know how hard it is to try to live an ordinary life being who and what I am? To know that on a whim, I could just end it all. Sometimes it scares even me. I get afraid not knowing what I'll do or what I'll become. It's terrifying to not know when you're going to wake up the next day and be the same. To look in the mirror every day only to realize you're not the man you thought you were, the man that you used to be. And the worst part, despite all the power, all the fame, despite everything I have, it means absolutely nothing if the people I love get hurt. And yet, despite everything I've done, the people I care for seem to always get hurt no matter what I do." Issei's eyes began to well up with tears hearing these words, for she understood how Issei felt. As she looked towards the door, she asked if that was his fear. The silhouette would nod and tell her that it was, but that truth be told, he didn't have the strength right now to face it. However, before he could hold his head down, Issei would move in front of the silhouette, kissing it on the forehead as she spoke to him. "Issei, I understand, and it's fine. Maybe you're not ready today. Maybe you're not ready tomorrow. But one day you will be ready to face it. And when you do, you won't be alone. You have me. You have everyone. We're all here for you. You try to carry so much on your own because you feel like you have to. Issei, I will always have faith in you. Even in the darkest of times. Even if I couldn't express it, I knew you would come and save me, and you did. You were willing to give up yourself, to give up everything that you were for me. You've done so for everyone else time and time again. And it's the reason why I love you, why I cherish you above anyone else. You mean more to me than anything. And no matter what you do, I will never be disappointed in you. You are not a failure in my eyes. You are so much more. Words can't even begin to describe what you mean to me, Issei. To everyone. I came here to bring you back. And I'm not leaving without you. As Asuya reached out her hands towards the silhouette of Issei, the silhouette slowly taking her hand, the two of them would turn away from the door. They knew that that door was a door that Issei would have to open someday. A door that he would have to open on his own when he was ready. But he would have the confidence to know that he would not be alone when that time came. And for now, that was enough. Asuya then being able to pull Issei's consciousness back to the surface and reviving him once more. Issei would awaken, but honestly, he would have no knowledge of what happened inside. The mental mindscape had had so many barriers put into place that he couldn't remember anything, but Asuya did. Without saying a word, she would kiss him in that moment. Even if he didn't fully remember, it didn't mean that she would let him forget. And she would keep her promise to be there for him, just as he was for her. Before long, everyone would return back home. Rosvisa was still a bit disheartened, mostly caught in her own depression since Odin had once again left her behind and gone back to Asgard without her. Rosvisa, now becoming known as the abandoned Valkyrie, and Rias, feeling bad for her, decided that she should come back with them for a while. In time, everyone would return back to school and try to go on with their normal lives. At least as normal as one could be when you were a devil after all. Issei being informed by Azazel having had a chance to speak with Kuroi, the Black Dragon, while he was unconscious, learning of how Issei had unwittingly untapped into the Juggernaut drive. Azazel would tell Issei that he needed to get a hold of that cursed energy, the Wrath Shield. If he let it consume him like that, and there was no telling what danger he might place himself into. And Issei would take that information to heart, vowing never to let himself be controlled by that rage. The following afternoon, though, Issei would enter into the club room. As he did so, he would check in on Rias, who was going over a few things. She seemed alright, but she had been off the last couple of days. No one knew quite for sure what was the matter with Rias, but Issei had taken notice. As he moved over towards her, he assured her that everything was going to be fine. That if she ever felt like the burden was too much to bear, that she could just put it on him, and that he would carry her burdens for her. Rias would be caught up in Issei, and she would fall into his arms once more. Meanwhile, Issei was finishing up his training with Asuya for the race, as the school sports festival was not too far off into the distance, and the two of them were doing the three-legged race together. However, he had forgotten something in the club room, and he needed to go pick it up. While on his way, he would run into Koneko, and the two of them would start a small conversation as they were making their way inside of the club room. As they did so, though, they would find Gasper laid out on the floor. As they went to go check on Gasper and make sure he was alright, the little half-vampire, half-devil slowly waking up to see Koneko and Issei, he asked if this was the real Issei this time. Koneko getting assent, she would open the door next to them immediately, as two of them made their way inside. It became clear as day what the problem was. There were two Isseis, one next to Koneko and Gasper, and the other one was holding Rias. It didn't take Issei long to figure out that there was someone impersonating him. Whoever this fake was, he had gotten a hold of Rias and had somehow warped her mind. causing her to attack them, and Issei having to create an airstrike shield just to shield everyone and protect them at the last moment. Issei tried to get closer to them, but it appeared as though the two of them were about to combine their power. Issei and Koneko could sense the hostility, and they knew they needed to get out of there quickly. As Issei turned back towards Rias and the fake Issei, seeing the two of them smile at one another, before turning back towards him and unleashing their power. Issei would use the portal shield, grabbing Koneko and Gasper and getting them out of there, as it seemed as though the club room had blown up to the outside. Everyone would gather and check and make sure that everyone else was alright. However, when they asked what had happened to Rias, it wouldn't take long, as Azazel, along with Rias, would arrive as well with news from Asgard. Loki taking responsibility for what had happened, responsible for the one placing a curse on both Rias and Issei in that moment. However, before they could get any questions out of him, he sealed himself in a barrier of ice in his own prison cell. Before long, they would find themselves in a meeting with Sir Zex telepathically with a hologram. They would be informed that after checking all of the realms, the only place Rias could be trapped in was the dimensional gap. And even then, they had no way of getting there. And the only people who did were associated with the Chaos Brigade. Sir Zex made it a point that he was the Devil King first and a concerned brother second. But even he was worried for his sister's safety. Everyone was. But the fact still remained that they were still at odds with the Chaos Brigade. For the Devil King to fraternize with the enemy just for the sake of his sister, it could call all of his questions into action. If he were willing to bend the rules to the enemy for something he wanted, what would he be willing to do in the future? At least, that was the perception that could be given off from doing such an act. However, Issei would tell them all that they wouldn't need to go that far. He had the power. He could rescue Rias. Of course, everyone wanted to go, and Issei understood their reasoning for it, but there was something telling him that this was something he needed to do on his own. He hoped everyone would understand, and sure enough, they actually would. But he did need help, though. As he looked over to Koneko, he asked her if she could get in touch with her sister. They needed to see Kuroka, because she was the only one capable of getting them to Vali. And for this plan, Issei was going to need the help of the White Dragon Emperor. Issei and Koneko would meet with Kuroka, Issei making his intentions very clear, that he wanted to see Vali, and she was the only one who could take him to him. Of course, Kuroka wanted something in return for her services. She was still after her sister and wanted her to join them, but Issei made it very clear Koneko wasn't going anywhere. Of course, Kuroka felt that it was rather rude to ask for something without giving something in return, but Issei wasn't in the giving mood. Of course, there wouldn't need to be any violence, as Vali would arrive from thin air, the group also hiding away, making sure that Kuroka was safe. As Vali came face to face with Issei made it clear that he needed to get to the dimensional gap, and he was the only one with the capabilities of doing so. Of course, Vali wondered why he would be so interested in going after Rias. He warned that those involved with the three great dragons never had the easiest of lives, and maybe this could be another sign of that destiny. Did it really think that it was wise to keep being involved with Rias, or with anyone for that matter? He didn't say this out of malice, but rather being genuinely thoughtful in this moment. After all, it was the involvement with the dragons in this life, in these circumstances, that led to Asya almost being killed. And now Rias was in a similar situation. Anyone involved with Issei would always face this potential concept. There would always be the threat of death or something much worse along the way. The pain of loss was the fate of any and all dragons. However, Issei made his intentions very clear of what he was going to do, and he had no intentions on backing down from that. Seeing his resolve, Vali would agree to help. Arthur, a member of the Vali team, would use his holy sword, Coldbrand. It was a sword capable of traveling through dimensions and even reaching the dimensional gap. He could make an opening for Issei to get through, and thankfully, with Issei's portal shield, and the seal having been placed back at the Grimoire home where everyone was waiting, all Issei would have to do was use his shield to get back home. The seal back in his homeworld acting as a beacon for him to get back towards. Although they would warn that it would take much mental focus and drain, and if he wasn't careful, even that might not be enough. However, Issei would take his chances. Once everyone was gathered and made aware of what he was going to do, they would wish him good luck. Issei turning back to the others and assuring them that everything would be fine. As Arthur would open up the hole through the gap of the dimensional void, he would make his way through alone, and the door would be closed behind him. Issei now traveled through the dimensional void. It seemed as though it were endless in every direction, to his left and to his right, from above and below. There was no floor and there was no ceiling. There was no left and there was no right. All sense of direction, time, space, everything, none of that mattered here. So for Issei, it wasn't a matter of trying to find where Rias was. It was to be where she had been. He was warned before going through that in order to find what you were looking for within the dimensional gap, you had to truly believe and want it. You have to truly believe that you would see Rias again, or otherwise you would never get the chance to. You could say that the void was the manifestation of one's own mind. And to only think that you may find someone, then the void would give you exactly what you want. That you may find what you are looking for. No, in order to gain what you wanted, you had to actually believe. You had to truly hold that conviction. Issei would do so, standing perfectly still. Kuroi, the black dragon, telling him to focus on cursed energy. Issei wasn't sure why he should, but Kuroi would simply tell him to do so. As he closed his eyes and searched, it wouldn't take long before Rias would appear before him. The two of them now coming face to face. Issei could see within Rias' eyes that she was not the same as she was before. She attacked him without mercy, and Issei had no choice but to fight back and hold his own, to stand against her and her power. As the two of them would collide with one another, Issei using his various shields and quick changes to block against Rias and her attacks. It became very clear just how powerful Rias truly was in that moment. And even for Issei, he was in awe of her power. He had never felt anything like this before, at least not from her up until this point. She was truly living up to her name as the crimson-haired princess of ruin. Airstrike shields, wind shields, Holy Cross shield, the Dragon Slayer shield, the Black Angel shield, the Chimera Viper shield. He had to use every one within his arsenal just to try to stave off her power, showing just how truly gifted she was. Just as it seemed as he was making a breakthrough though, as he desperately yelled and tried to reach within her subconscious, A dark aura would begin to form around Rias, to the point where she would blow him away as she started to don her own balance breaker. If Issei didn't know any better, it looked like the black armor that he possessed, and in her arms was that of a shield. It was the shield of wrath, and he could feel the cursed energy oozing from out of it. But that wasn't just the cursed energy of the shield, no, that was the curse that had been placed upon her by Loki. They were merging together and feeding off of one another. All of that negativity festering and growing. The curse that had been placed on them was a curse that fed off of one's own insecurities. But for Issei, he wondered what would Rias have to feel insecure about. And then he remembered. He remembered everything that she had been through. Everything that Rias had gone through in her life. Despite the strong and independent look that she gave, she was probably as wrecked as everyone else, trying desperately to live up to these expectations, to stand on her own and to be the person that she knew she could be. Once he realized this, he understood that now he couldn't afford to hold back. He had to give it his all. Right now, she needed him more than ever, and the only one that could save her was him. Issei would focus all of his energy and concentrate it into the heart of his shield, the gemstone beginning to glow, and for Rias, her shield would do the same. The two powers colliding with one another in an epic clash. The strength of the curse and the strength of Issei's own feelings and emotions, to see who would truly win out in the end. With a final push, Issei's power would blow away the armor, and for Rias, she would be freed in that moment. Looking to see that Issei had come to save her, she would rush to his arms, holding him close. As the two of them held one another in their embrace though, the cursed energy that had been blown away from Rias manifested itself once again into Issei, the clone looking down at the original, as the two of them knew their next clash would be the last one. The cursed energy morphed itself into that of the cursed dragon Juggernaut Drive. The large black dragon now looming over them. Issei and Rias now standing together side by side within the void. Issei felt a spark coming from his shield. He wasn't sure of what this was or even what it could be. However, he had been informed by Ajika when he was given the mutated piece that his power was now going to elevate in a way, to transform into something truly new and unique only to him. His power was evolving, and he was on the cusp of a new limit. But he knew that for this time around at least, he needed some help. As he turned over to Rias, he asked her to hold his hand. The two of them doing so, they would hold up Issei's shield up against that of the cursed dragon. As they did so, a red magical circle, a seal, would form around Issei's shield. It seemed as though their powers were morphing and combining together as one. Before finally, Issei's shield would give off a great burst of energy, destroying the dragon once and for all. With the curse now defeated, the two would prepare to leave. However, in that moment, the dimension would begin to shift and change. They were unsure of where they were going or what was going on, until eventually they saw the silhouette of Great Red itself, the Great Dragon Emperor, passing through. Croy would tell them to follow the Great Dragon to see where it goes, and they did so without hesitating. Eventually, though, they would awaken to a beach. As the night sky shined over them, This must have been some sort of dimension, they just weren't sure of where they were exactly. As the two of them stood under the stars, they began to reflect on their own feelings and everything they had been through up until now. Issei would ask Rias if she remembered asking him if he were happy that he had met her. Rias remembered this question, and it was one that still loomed on her mind. Issei would decide that now was the time to answer that question, because now he felt to an extent he understood what she was feeling. She had always felt as though she had been a burden to Issei and to everyone else, that she tried to shoulder so much responsibility and everything on her own. In this moment, the only thing Issei could do was reassure her himself. He was happy with the life that he lived now, and he was happy that he had gotten a chance to meet her, that they were here in this moment in time. He wasn't sure of what the future held for either of them. Maybe his power was truly a curse, and maybe it would lead to their own destruction. Maybe despite all of his efforts, one day when the world came to an end, they would burn away with the world into nothingness. But he made one vow, even if that day should come, even if everything were to blow up in their face, and the world was to be swallowed up and to fade into nothingness, at the very least they would have each other. And he vowed to be there for her till the end, good or bad. This reassurance was sealed with a kiss between the two, a confirmation of this promise, as they would soon return home to everyone else, who were happy to see that their friends had made it back from the void safely. Even Vali was impressed, as he had gotten something out of the exchange as well. A chance to see Great Red once more, and it seemed his dream was closer to a reality. In the meanwhile, time would move on. The sports festival would come and go, and everyone were excited for the future and what lied ahead. Rosvisa would now join the House of Grimmery as well, assuming the final piece in Rias' possession, becoming the Rook. Azazel happy to see that Rias now had a full set on her own, and now any problems they faced, they would face it together head on. He had seen the power of all of the House of Grimmery, and he had seen that they had all grown in their own and unique ways. As long as they stuck together and forged their bond, their power would continue to grow. As for Issei, for now, he would be sleeping. As he slept, he would find himself in a dream. He would come face to face with Kuroi, the Black Dragon Emperor. The two of them now having a chance to truly meet formally face to face. Sure, they had their conversations here and there, but for the most part they kept to themselves. But Issei knew that the time for being in solitude was over. As Kuroi asked, Issei would explain that it was time for him to learn everything about the shield, what it was truly capable of, and of the people that came before him. Kuroi would agree, now completely revigored, having met his brothers Albion and Dreg once more. Now he felt his fighting spirit moving to the surface. But what was more though, Kuroi would inform Issei that he was on the cusp of a new power. Unlike the power, divine dividing, and boosted gear of Albion and Dre. The power of the shield was something far different, something far more greater than Issei could ever comprehend. He couldn't fully describe where Issei was right now, but if he had to describe it, he would say that Issei was on the edge. There was something right there, and he just had to grab onto it. And if he could, he and the shield would evolve into something that would be of the next level. A level that he hadn't seen since that of his late friend, Master Naofumi. Issei in that moment also had other questions. He had read the book of the Shield Hero, and he had read of the stories of Naofumi. But there was obviously more to him than just the books, and the dragon was the source of information. Issei and the dragon would sit in the mindscape, as he had a lot to ask about the Shield Hero and all that had come before him. These are the stories and adventures of Issei Hyodo, devil in service to Rias Grimory, as we continue the journey of the Devil of the Shield. This concludes What If Issei Was the Shield Hero? High School DxD Curse of the Shield, Season 3, Part 3. As always, if you liked today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we are going to be continuing What If Issei Was the Ghost Rider? High School DxD Mark of the Dragon, Season 2, Part 2. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.